Namaskaram to one and all. We live in a material world. I want to take you to the journey of my understanding of our material world. Would any one of you be willing to work just for food? Just for food, nothing else. You'll get only food. You'll have to work with food. No, right? We all need more than food. But what if I tell you there's a group of living beings who have been doing this for generations, and they do it from the time they take birth? I'm talking about bacteria. And what we did was employ bacteria. We only gave them food, and they did an amazing work for us. So this is paper, as we know. This is a very common paper that what we use for writing and printing. This is made of cellulose. This is also cellulose, but this is not made in a similar fashion how this is made. This is made by bacteria using coconut water, and just coconut water. What I'm holding is basically coconut water converted into cellulose by bacteria. How paper is made, I hope all of you know. We'll have to cut a tree, trim its branches, debark it, and chop it into small pieces. The tree is generally, it's called lignocellulosic material, which means it has both lignin and cellulose. Lignin is the woody part of it, like it's a brown color adding substance. So to make paper, what we have to do is like take the wood and then chop it and then cook it with some chemicals to remove lignin, and then we get the cellulose part of it. Then we take the cellulose part and then we have to pulp it, make a pulp. We send it to a paper machine. The paper machine forms into sheets, and then we cut the sheets, and then we get the paper as we know. But bacterial cellulose is an interesting process. You take coconut water, you break open coconut, and you get coconut water. You sterilize this coconut water because there are other bacteria in it. So you sterilize the coconut water, and then you add a bacterial culture to it. Just like how we make curd, you add a bacterial culture to it. And 2 weeks later, we have something like this. It's like a gelatinous jelly-like material, and it's called bacterial cellulose. So what does this bacteria do? Why does it do what it does? I know that like when you hear the term bacteria, it often has a bad connotation. It's like something germs and something bad. But let me tell you, it's only 1% of the known bacteria that is like bad. Rest of the bacteria are really good for us. In fact, our human body is regulation. The reason for we staying alive, major part of it is bacteria. Our gut health greatly depends on bacteria. We have actually more number of bacteria in our gut than the number of cells in our body. So let me tell you how this process works. So this is made by a bacteria called Acetobacter. It's a family of bacteria. There are other bacteria also which can do this. So what it does is it's an oxygen-loving bacteria, and as I said before, we give it food. So the food part is in the liquid, in the coconut water. It also has some micronutrients that it needs. And since it also loves oxygen, this bacteria goes to the surface of the nutrient mix. So it has to stay there. So it makes kind of a raft mechanism. So it starts secreting cellulose from its body. Cellulose is a polymer of glucose. Do you understand polymer? When you say polymer, we generally have a thing as it could be plastic. No, polymer, cellulose is a biopolymer, and it is the most abundant biopolymer on the surface of Earth. So this bacteria, what it does is, it starts linking, it takes one glucose. Glucose is the sugar part of, in the coconut water. It starts taking glucose units, and it starts linking it together. And if we look it under a microscope, we can actually see there's a bacteria, and then it has a tail kind of a thing. It's a cellulose chain. And then you also know that the bacteria splits into two in a process called mitosis. And when it splits into two, one strand of cellulose becomes two strands of cellulose, and it keeps on going like that. So eventually, in time of 2 weeks, what we end up with is a interlinked, very connected mesh of cellulosic fibers. And these fibers are made by bacteria, and the sizes are in the order of their sizes. So what we call as nanomaterial, this is essentially a nanomaterial. And this is the one of the simplest low-tech way to make nanomaterial. You can make it at home also. Another term which is tossed around a lot in these times are sustainability. So if I ask you now that we know, like we have regular paper and bacterial cellulose-based paper, which one would be sustainable? I mean, most of the companies for greenwashing or other purposes, they've been using this word. But I would like to dive a little deep into it, and let's see. So sustainability was first termed in 1718 by a German forest conservator and a miner. So basically it's their interest was to see that if we consume the forest at this rate, we will not have forest after some time. So if we want to consume forest or consume the wood from the forest, what is the way in which we can do that? So there was a sustainable approach towards forest conservation. So that was the first time this was termed. But however, we know that there are communities around the world which are like very respectful to nature. But as a record of the word sustainability, this was the first time it was termed. But sustainability as we know today, the popular sustainability as we know today, it was popularized after a Brundtland Commission report. So Brundtland Commission report was essential because we felt that after Industrial Revolution, there has been a great deal of degradation of our world, and we need to do something. So the UN appointed a World Commission to come up with a report. And the World Commission came up with a report called the Brundtland Commission report. It's a 300-page document. And if you want, you can scan this QR code and it will take you to the document. Many of the things that are concerns in the document are still valid. And the commonality between what happened in 1700s and what is happening in the Brundtland report is that both of these approaches are human-centric. It is based on looking at what is that we need as human beings, what is that we need. We'll put that in the center and we will do everything around it. Sustainability's definition right now is also that it is to ensure that future generations have their resources while ensuring that we also do our things. So, I mean, it's paraphrasing what it is. But it is very human-centric, and our world doesn't work that way. So I would like to look at the world in a system approach, where we define a system boundary, which is the boundary of Earth, and then look at things as like materials. Because we are all materials, end of the day. Like you, me, this table, chair, everything is material. Like material follows from the word matter, and matter is something that has mass and occupies space. And by that definition, we are all materials. So let's look at our world and let's see what is happening here. So there is a material input, and that's a very small material input. If, let's say, Earth is hit by an asteroid, or there is a star, cosmic dust settling through our atmosphere, that can be considered as material coming into our system. Material going out of the system would be some gases escaping from our atmosphere, like helium or hydrogen will be escaping from our atmosphere. There are other material also, like if you are sending a satellite out of Earth, that could also be considered as, and people who wants to go out to outer space, that could also be considered as materials going out of the system. Then there is also energy input into the system. Our energy inputs come from solar energy. So sun is a primary source of all our energy. And then there is a certain amount of energy exiting out of the system, which is due to radiation, right? So this is a primary system level definition of our world. And our world is a material world. In this material world, we have living and non-living beings. Anybody wants to take a guess how much would be the ratio of how much by mass, how much would be living being and non-living beings? Okay, it is 1:1 million, which means like we are the entirety of the living organism, the biomass is only 1/1 millionth of the entire mass of this system, right? Follows so much? Okay. And in the living world, it is dominated by plants, or 80% is plants. Anybody wants to take a guess what is the next? Okay, it's bacteria. 13% of our living biomass is bacteria. And humans are only 0.01% of the mass. Is that a concern? Like we are always concerned about like our population growing and like our materials, our material consumption being so much. We are such a small beings like in this big world. Why are we so concerned? Okay, this will give some picture. 70,000 years ago, 68,000 BC, our population was only 10,000. And what is it today? 8.2 billion. And this is still 0.01%. This is the concern. We have disturbed our food cycles great deal. We have disturbed food cycles, water cycles, water tables, wind patterns, and collectively we can call this the climate change. So if we see that, why do we do this? What is causing all this? This is because, again, we are a materialistic species. We need just not food, water and shelter and clothing. No, we need much more than that. We live in a society where we have creators who are willing to make stuff for us. For example, creators, what they do, like creators work with something called material and they give it a form. So in this case, it's a plastic water bottle and the materials here are plastic and water. It could be another embodiment of this could be a water tank. A plastic boat could also be an example for this. There's the same material plastic, but if you look at the functionalities are different. The function in its cases are different. So the creator is a person who takes up a function and gives it a form for the people to use. And then there are consumers. People who are making these demands, apparently, most of the time not. Consumers don't make demands. It's often driven by other factors, but end of the day, it's consumed by the consumers. So there are creators and consumers. So in this living world, in this material world of ours, who has a more responsibility? Who has a moral responsibility? It's often the moral responsibility is given on the consumer. The consumer has to be conscious. But I would say I'm also a designer. As a designer, I feel the onus of responsibility of material consumption, making the right choice lies with the designer. You cannot expect a consumer to do anything because this is upstream and that is downstream. So it has already flown there. So if any decision has to be made, it has to be made upstream. So how can we look at the materials and wisely consume this? Another word tossed around these days is circularity. And I would like to say, if we look at materials, only living beings have a circular nature. Non-living things does not have a circular nature. So if we are to choose a circular material, we don't have to look any further. We only have to choose living material because only they can be circular. For example, if you want to cut a tree, go ahead, cut a tree, plant another one. This is the replenishing aspect of living beings. And that is exactly what circularity is. But if you want to use granite and you cut a mountain, it is not going to grow back. So that is a no-no. Don't do that. And another aspect is the embodied energy. So in our world, we have solar energy as a primary source of energy, and then we have primary the beings which are called the primary producers, and these primary producers convert solar energy directly into some form of material, or it stores energy in some form of material. So plants are a great example. And then animals that eat plants, herbivores, they are like one tropic above. And then there is carnivore, which eat, and then there are higher carnivores. So what happens in each of these steps is that when plants are eaten by animals, only 10% of the energy is being converted. As you know, like all the energy transformation processes have an efficiency, so only 10% of the energy is on an average converted when we go from one tropic to the next. So if we want to use a material with a better energy efficiency, we should always look at the bottom of the pyramid. And also that the bottom of the pyramid will have a larger biomass. As we know before, like the plants are like 80% of our biomass. So if we want to use a material which is sustainable, not sustainable, I would just not call sustainable, which is more energy efficient, we should go for a material which is in the bottom of this pyramid. Another aspect is matching timelines. Let's say we are going for a plant source and we are still, so all the other two aspects are matched. The circularity aspect is check, the energy aspect is check. Now the third aspect would be matching the timelines. So a coconut, every 2 months you can pluck coconuts. So I would say, and we don't have to cut the tree. So coconut has a 2-month life cycle. And on the other hand, if you use a tree to make paper, it will at least take 3 years to reach a form where we can harvest the tree for making paper. So timelines-wise, this is a better version. The thinking that got us here is not going to get us out of here. The thinking that is prevalent right now is also that for our need, we need to conserve our resources for the needs of our future generations. This is a very human-centric approach, and we have already established how small we are, how minuscule we are, and how much disruptions we have caused. So what is the way out? We can have a look with materials in center, because end of the day, we are also materials, and it is only broadening of our scope of our vision. Like from being human-centric, if we move to a material-centric system, then we can hope for a better future. Thank you.